The state has, well, actually, sorry, I forgot to mention the first part. The state responded saying, no, you don't deserve a Franks. Well, the prosecutor said, you don't deserve a Franks hearing because your arguments are really stupid. And I think most of us agreed with that. But Nick is responding. This is the legal motion known as Na'ah. So this is Nick's Na'ah defense, that he does deserve a Franks hearing. Let's have a look. The state has reasonably restated the two issues remaining before the court. With regards to the defendant's pending motion, the state's conclusion, however, is incorrect. Na'ah. The defendant has made a showing sufficient to warrant a Franks hearing, and the defendant has shown that the seizure of firearms was unlawful. Well, actually, he didn't show that at all. In fact, they're quite the opposite. The United States Constitution and the Minnesota Constitution guarantee defendants the right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. The court stands as a bulwark against the unfettered authority of the state's police powers. And while the state has correctly identified that rule, the presence of probable cause should be determined under a totality of the circumstances test. The state fails to recognize that under the totality of circumstances test, Detective Pomplom's narrative upon which the court is inadequate as Detective Pomplom's material misrepresentations and omissions render the warrant constitutionally deficient. Bulwark, yes. Bulwark. The fuck is a bulwark? The bulwark? A bulwark is a shield. Okay, a bulwark is a shield. And I only know this because of the bulwark of Asimov, which is a very, you can shout nerd at me from behind your conspiracy screens if you want. If you know, you know. But a bulwark is a shield, okay? Argument number A, or letter A, as the case may vary. Showing sufficient to invoke Franks. Regarding the law as suggested by the state would lead to a patently absurd result. Oh, yes, patently absurd. Oh, my goodness. It's Baldo Baggins and the desolation of Smug with this language. The state's tortured construction of the prevailing law would ensure that no defendant could ever succeed in challenging an affidavit. This notion by itself offends both the warrant clause and the due process clauses of the United States and the Minnesota constitutions. As is obvious from the substance of defendant's motion to suppress and dismiss, defendant is challenging the accuracy of material facts in a facially valid search warrant. Therefore, the district court is not confined to the four corners of the search warrant, and the court may look to intrinsic evidence. I almost thought this was lolcow, but it's Louis cow. Well, it's Louis. Or upon that evidence as such other evidence as it deems necessary to make its ruling. Clearly, this court can go outside the four corners of the warrant in its analysis of the sufficiency of a challenge to a warrant under Franks. The state is insufficient to make the difficult preliminary showing. So this is essentially the first argument. And it boils down to, well, if I can't challenge it, then nobody can. Now, that's not what this is. That's not what anyone's saying, really. Of course you can challenge a warrant. Of course you can get a Franks hearing. But the thing is that Nick hasn't presented enough information to really be owed one. Now, should he get one? Maybe. I mean, why not, right? They can do the Franks hearing and then he can get denied. He hasn't really made any sufficient argument, in my mind at least. I mean, you might have a different opinion, of course. But in my mind, I have not seen anything that is worthy of being granted this Franks hearing. But if he did, you know what? Give it to him. Why not? Why not? Let him bring his pixels and his watermarks and all his documents to court and see what happens. That's his strongest argument. We're going to go into the second strongest at the last point. I'm going to skip defendant's video and go next. The determination of Kandiyohi County Health and Human Services is relevant and determinative. Once again, the state, while correctly stating the rules, has reached the wrong conclusion. Oh, well, that's very smug thing to say. You had the right evidence, but you got the wrong answer, you dummies. Oh, no. State, say it ain't so. The screening of the child maltreatment reports is controlled by an entirely different set of statutes, and the standards other than criminal offenses. The standards are much lower for screening child maltreatment reports. So this is in regards to Nick said there wasn't enough information basically to have a search warrant, and then the county health people came back and said, actually, you know, when it comes to children, we err on the side of caution, and we're a bit more easy on these because, you know, the risk is much higher for, of course, children are some of the most vulnerable people in society. The state is suggesting that the failure to meet probable cause to satisfy the lower burden of proof for the clear and convincing standard has no impact on probable cause to satisfy a beyond a reasonable doubt standard. The requisite showing necessary to initiate a child protective matter, being much lower than necessary to secure a warrant, should have foreclosed that basis for Detective Pomplum, or deputy, I suppose. It's not actually detective. And isn't it? I thought it was detective. I thought it was Detective Pomplum as a deputy. And even if it didn't, he had a duty to tell Judge Fisher. That's the judge that Nick talked about a little bit and apparently cornered at an elevator. But now Nick is saying, that's not true. I never said that. I never cornered that woman in the elevator and gave her a piece of my mind because I couldn't beat her in court. It's not true. Anyway, he had a duty to tell Judge Fisher that the determination had already been made by County Health Services and the allegations had been found insufficient. Well, here's the thing with these allegations. You get one, you probably can laugh it off as like, oh, it's probably just trolls on the internet. I mean, he was getting doxxed and he was getting swatted and all these things are happening. It's not unreasonable to think that a certain number of reports coming in about Nick would have been incorrect. But the thing is, these things add up. And if you've got these reports of children being in danger from 4 different individuals, and then you get a report that this person is, well, they're a known gun owner because Nick has talked about his guns on the stream quite often. But then it comes forward that he's also an addict and he's got the coke, which is illegal in Minnesota to have the coke and the guns. Now, you can argue about the morality of that. I certainly have. Then they say, you know what? We've got all these child service things. We've got these, we know this guy's got guns and now he's got this coke. Well, you know, maybe we should just go check just to make sure the kids are, you know, that's how it works. It kind of adds on and on and on and on until it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. Let me see. His omission was misleading and material, as was his failure to inform Judge Fisher that Candy Ojai Health Services had determined that the incident or condition does not fit the definition of child abuse or neglect as defined by the Minnesota Statute, Chapter 260E. Okay. Although I will say that I think of these arguments, C has been the strongest so far. It doesn't convince me because I saw the stream, but and I've heard the stories, and I know about the SpaghettiOs, and I know about the Minnesota king bed that sleeps 4. And I know about all the swinging, and I know about all the coke being dropped on chairs next to children and things. Very dangerous. So it does not convince me, but I think as a legal argument, this is the strongest one thus far. In my opinion, as a non-practicing non-lawyer, just by the way. Let's see. D, the firearm seizure remains unlawful. Well, actually, I'm going to disagree with this. The state is overly reliant on the plain view exception. The defendant distinguished in his motion. The state, however, failed to address either the strong relationship between the seized and described items, standard, or the nexus between the items seized and criminal behavior. Standard raised in defendant's motion. As such, the court should consider any counter-argument waived and grant defendant's motion. This is the weakest argument. Holy shit. This one. This is it's a big red F on this one. Can I draw on this? Yeah, there we go. That's an F. That's an F on that argument, I'm afraid. That's a big fucking F on this one. So there is one way that this argument could actually have some water, and that is if they shed the body cam footage. But here's the deal. You had the coke. You had the guns. They're in the same rule. It's against the law. Now, again, I've said that I don't think this law is necessarily moral. And I think that all laws should be based in morality. But the fact of the matter is it is the law, and you did break the law, and they were in plain view, at least as far as we know, but we can't tell unless you show us the body cam. The body cam would actually show this immediately, because when the cops walk into the master bedroom with the big Minnesota king and the secret bathroom that leads to the chamber where they hide the chamber of secrets where they hide Sunny the dog, and she never sees any sunlight. If we saw that, maybe we could determine if the cops were rifling around looking for the guns. But the fact of the matter was that they found the guns under the bed or on the floor, and I believe there was actually a bolt lock in the AR style gun. This is the weakest argument, and you have to be Barnes or someone to believe this argument. This one's just patently ridiculous, really. So very, very embarrassing on argument D. And okay, so we've got the conclusion next, but first we have to go back.